the web classes and stuff. So one of the things that I want to give to you first are some of the things that I have been giving to you at the end of the web classes. But the reason I want to give you these things first is that this is a progressive series. So today we're going to get through a certain amount of content, and we'll answer the questions as we get them and stuff. But again, this is a different format, and it's a progression. It's a series. So hopefully by the time that we're through, everybody will be a geothermal guru, and nobody will be scared to not only sell it, but also to present it in an industry that a lot of people are thinking that it is a dying and in some in cases a dead industry. So again, thank you for being here, and we'll get started. All right. This is my phone number and my email address. If you want to, you can take a picture of this. And again, I say thank you in advance. Things that we always try to give you is our technical support line, the 800 number on the left, and then also the websites on the right, where you can get information from for our product, whether it be a salesy brochure or even a wiring diagram. So the ABC program, that's that contractor program that helps you build your customer base, build your company, grow your company through that program. And then, of course, the E-Academy, where we're getting the registrations through these websites and the little quizzes and stuff afterwards, so you can get certificates of participation, things like that. So again, here we go. So let's look at the contents of study with this particular idea. And one of the things that always comes up is, who are my geothermal customers? Where do I go to market? Where's my demographics? What am I looking at? Am I looking at a new residential situation, a new home situation, or can I literally look at a retrofit and have that to be my target of customer base? And all of that is absolutely true. The idea that a customer of yours that you may have on the list is not a geothermal customer, I'd have a little bit of an issue, a problem with that, because in my vast years of looking at the geothermal industry and looking at where some people have put in geothermal in the applications and the installations, I can just sit back and go, wow, that really took an out of the box thinking to be able to come up with a plan of action to be able to put a geothermal product, because maybe that product is a little bit bigger as far as left and right, front and back. It may weigh a little bit more than the problem, the industries type scenario. But some of those people really avail themselves to think that everybody that they have, everybody that they see, everybody that they drive by is actually a geothermal customer. So when we get a mindset like that, we are capable of looking outside that square box or that round hole that we're dealing with, and seeing that we've got a lot of potential customers out there that are waiting for some ideas of a different type of comfort level, a different type of an economical level that we can supply them through the geothermal industry. And why do I sell geothermal? Why? The bottom line is, hey, let's make some money. Okay, that's why you sell geothermal. Let's make some money. Let's put some money in your bank account. Saving up for kids and grandkids and whatnot, and growing your business and that kind of thing. That's why we sell geothermal, is to make money. I don't ever want to deflate that part. We don't sell it just to sell it purposes. We're out there to make money doing it. The reason behind that is that when we do get a mindset of selling geothermal, and we do get a mindset of the capability of selling that, our minds have changed from a low-end SEER-rated piece of equipment that we're selling to a high piece of economical equipment that the AHRI book would tell you that product, that Bosch SM product, ABC cabinet, whatever it may be, that is supposed to last for 25 plus years. So why do I sell geothermal? I sell it for economics. Why do I sell geothermal? I sell it for the longevity of that structure's comfort level. Every geothermal that has been sold, chances are when those Mrs. Jones and Mrs. Smith sell that structure, that geothermal is going to increase the price or the selling price of that home, just because of how it is supposed to operate and cut utility bills and last a long time, brings the value of that particular structure up. So when can I sell geothermal? If you've been in any one of my classes, you'll always remember, hopefully, that you can sell it, and you should be able to sell it 24/7, 365. There's no reason not to be able to sell geothermal in that type of scenario. I totally understand that sometimes when it's a Friday afternoon and Mrs. Jones's air conditioner blew the terminals out of the compressor and oil is leaking down the concrete pad, and all of a sudden it's an emergency situation and it's July the 2nd. Totally get that. But for me to say that I can't sell geothermal in an emergency situation is really staying inside that box and not thinking about outside. And so when we ask people, when do you sell geo, it's always a long lookout, long planned out type scenario. I've got 7 months to put it in or whatnot and that kind of thing. We want you to get where you can sell geothermal in a emergency type situation. And hopefully by the end of this series, you'll be able to see the benefit not only of selling geothermal 24/7, 365, but you'll have the mindset to think that, you know what, I can do that. I can sell it 24/7. And then how do I sell it? And I totally get it that our tax credits were 30%, and then there's 26, and they're going to go to 22. I totally get all of that. But I do have a little bit of a problem when we had a 30% tax credit, and the only people that were selling geothermal were based their sales off of that tax credit, and they were telling themselves that they never could sell geothermal without the tax credit. There's a lot of geothermal that were sold back in the days before the tax credit, and there was a lot of geothermal sold when people didn't deserve a tax credit, or they didn't have that liability to have a tax credit. Remember that the geothermal industry is really an industry that's kind of set itself apart from the air source industry. And sometimes we go into people's shops and they have a residential and a commercial split shop type scenario. We've also been into companies where they actually had a residential or a geothermal shop, and they also had an air source shop. And they had split their guys to the point where you had two different entities. You had if you don't mind, and they the guys that did geo may not have never touched another air source. They may have came from the air source side, but now they're doing geo. So how do I sell geo? I sell it with my head up high. I don't try to rip people off because it is a high dollar, what people might think about it being a high dollar situation and a high dollar sale. One of the things that we've got to get unafraid of, if you don't mind, is asking for that sale. So when people say, well, Fred, how do I sell that geothermal? It's 3 times as much money as the high dollar efficiency based industry of air source machinery. And then we get to asking them questions about, okay, what brand do you sell? And you know what? Really don't care about the brand you sell. Let's talk about the efficiency of that brand. So let's talk about a 21, 23, 20 SEER piece of equipment that has all of the boxes involved in it. You've got the indoor units, you have the outdoor units, you got the Freon lines, you got this and that. All of those things, let's put it on a table. Okay. And then at the end of that table, let's add up all of those boxes and what they cost. Okay. So at that point in time, we're going to take a look at that, and we're going to get a total cost of those boxes. Okay. And let's say it was a 4-ton system. So you got a 4-ton air handler, you have a 4-ton coil, you've got a 4-ton outside units, you've got the refrigerant lines, all of that kind of thing for that 4-ton system. Then you come up with a price. Then let's take a Rev C 4-ton SM product, and you've got a cost. Okay. Well, you've got a cost of your package units. You got a cost of your heat strips if you were putting heat strips in there. You got a cost of your controller. You got a cost of your loop pumps if it's a closed loop. So you add up all of those, okay? And then you get to look at the 2 different totals of one table versus another table. And it's been my experience that the totals of those 2 tables, when you look at them side by side, there is not $1,000 difference between the 2 tables, the 2 totals sitting side by side. And then we didn't even cost, let's say the geothermal is $1,000 more. Okay. Let's just say it is. We didn't even talk about the process of a factory installed HRP piece of equipment, that device that can preheat the hot water up to 140 degrees on the Bosch side. We didn't even talk about that particular item to go in. And now all of a sudden that $1,000, because of the monies that I can save per month, year around, year after year, getting that HRP system involved in my potable hot water heating, I now take that $1,000 even, and I deduct it, and I keep on looking at it, and all of a sudden those $1,000 get to be closer together and closer together and closer together. So Fred, what's the difference in the geothermal product versus the air source product? Not very much. So what's the difference? Why can't I sell a high dollar why can't I put someone's name on a dotted line on a geothermal job? Chances are it's the loop field. Chances are it's that thing that sits out there in their backyard that allows the fluid to flow through their pipes year after year and month after month and day after day. Chances are it's that. So how do I sell a geothermal system? There's a whole lot of mindsets that I can't, just because of that cost. So here's an idea. There are a lot of electrical power companies that are wanting to diminish their power consumption. And there's a lot of electrical power companies now. I know the one in my area here in Western Oklahoma, they literally lease the loop. So what you could do as a contractor, you could call the electrical power company and you could give them the address or the place where you're fixing to Mr. Customer, Mr. Smith is wanting to do the geothermal bid. And you would tell them, listen, I've got a certain amount of BTU, summertime, wintertime loss and gain, and you've done a manual J on the system, and then they will start to design the loop field. And they will lease the loop to Mr. Jones. So Mr. Jones does not have to have any out-of-pocket money for that loop field. Okay? The energy company literally owns it. They will maintain it if it needs to be, and they will charge back on the homeowner's utility bill a certain amount of money. Well, Fred, what's that money? It's probably somewhere between the $22 and the $77 range. Oh my gosh. Well, how long do they do that? Well, anywhere from 4 to 7 years. And once that loop is paid off, then that particular number comes off of their utility bill. The nicest thing about this particular program is that when we go from an air source system to a geothermal system, chances are we're going to be decreasing their utility bill. So that $17 to $77 per month is actually a negative type deal, and they are literally seeing a making money issue month after month after month instead of a costly issue month after month. So there's a lot of programs out there. There's a lot of things that we may not understand or even know about through the electrical power company, and people are doing that. There are some builders out there that are literally putting in geothermal loops into their areas where they are building multiple homes so that this particular area can be a geothermal, and they will advertise it as a geothermal resident situation, a housing program, things like that. So again, think outside the square line and understand that there are a lot of programs out there to help us sell geothermal. And I would never tell anybody that I would never, and I say this in class all the time, I would never tell anybody this is my first geothermal job. Okay, just wouldn't do that. If they ask, then you call me and I'll tell you what to tell. We're not going to lie to them, but the issue behind doing a geothermal job is it is not rocket science. There's a lot of people out there to help you. There's a lot of people that will get in the ditch and to fuse the pipe and all that kind of thing. So again, don't be scared of selling a geothermal job. So when you're looking at a situation from this, we can look at it and you can say, what can I expect in a thermal installation process? What is it? Where is it different from the air source? Well, one of the things is you got to look at ductwork is ductwork. Okay. The other thing that we have to look at is the physical size of my geo indoor unit, what we would call the package unit. That package unit is not like a regular air handler in that it doesn't have a top and a bottom to it for flow of air to basically pass through it. It may be an upflow. It may be a vertical situation, but the return, which would be on bottom of an air handler, is now going to be on the left-hand side or the right-hand side. So the physical cabinetry spacing that we're going to need, whether this system is in the attic or in a closet or in a basement some type, it has to be thought about. So I can expect some differential of a location in a structure type scenario. The other thing that is different is when I'm looking at a geothermal install, I've got to look at some of the ideas behind what type of system is it going to be. There are basically two different types of residential geothermal installation process or in equipment. You're looking at a system that is what we call a water to water, or you're looking at a system what we call water to air. The water to water is a very great piece of equipment. Allows us to heat a structure, heat the floor, heat the walls, heat the towel rack, whatever we may want to do with that particular water to water system, and even in some cases cool the space through some air type situations in coils. But we're looking at a very efficient way to heat the mass and then not heat the air. So a water-to-water type system is a very good way to create comfort. There's a lot of people that move from the north that have had a water-to-water floor heat system, move down here into where I live or even farther south, and they want to bring that mentality. They want to bring that floor heat, that comfort level to their next house down here in the south. And they're very adamant about, I had it once and I'm going to have it again. So we in the south have actually had to meet their requirements and learn a little bit about the water to water and floor heat where we didn't have that necessary need in the past. One of the things also about the differential in an installation process that is different from the air source is of course the loop field. Where's it going to be located? How do I go about doing that? We'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But those are some of just the small differentials of things that we have to look at when we're looking at the different from air source to so, and again, what kind of certificates, what kind of license are they different than what I need? Most of the guys, the heat and air guys, are not going to have a $800,000 to $1,200 or $1,200,000 drilling rig laying around that they can just go use. So they probably don't have a drilling license. Okay. Chances are we're going to ask somebody, we're going to pay somebody to come out there to do our what we would call our drilling, or what we would call the excavating type scenario. Any time that you would go dig in somebody's backyard or side yard or wherever you're going to be, you're going to have to get some type of a location permit. You're going to have to find what's underneath that ground. Nobody with a backhoe or an excavator or a trencher is going to put that bucket, that chain in the ground until everything that can be located is located. Your or their liability insurance does not have enough value to it if they broke some big fiber optic cable or something like that and caused some major havoc from the East Coast to the West Coast type scenario. So you've got to understand that there are some parameters that you have to deal with. Sometimes that goes into play. I know here in Oklahoma, we would call Okie dig. And you basically can't put a tooth in the ground until 72 hours later. So the locators, the gas line, the telephone lines, the trunk people that come through the land with gas piping and all that kind of thing, they have their own people to come out and locate those items for you and flag them so that you can dig in a safe environment. So license, you may have to have a drilling license. You may have to have a state type board approved drilling license with liability insurance and things like that. When you're purchasing a Bosch geothermal package unit, you do not have to have a certain license type scenario. Bosch doesn't require you to have a state license or anything like that. There's a lot of states that don't have to have a mechanical type license, but then there's some that are. The majority of the things that we would get involved in, and we would ask for you to thank you for being trained. But also you would have to probably have an EPA type license or carry an EPA card. What are the different types of residential and geo and which is better and that kind of thing? We talked a little bit about the different types of systems, but let's kind of advance that a little bit. When we're looking at a different type of product, we basically have let's go to residential, and we basically have one product. It's a package unit. It sits inside the structure, and it is basically bought in two different ways. It's a copper nickel or a copper type coax. And so we're looking at either an open loop or a closed loop application. An open loop is something that we're going to take Mother Earth's water out of the ground. There's going to be some type of a auxiliary type pump that is going to take that and take that water, run it through my coax, and then dispose of it somewhere. So when we're looking at an open loop, in some areas would call it a pump and dump. Some areas down in the South would call it a once through. The issue behind a open loop type application, you always have to ask yourself three questions. Okay, you've got to ask yourself three questions, and in any one of these three questions can change at any one time. And if one of the answers changes, then it changes our output. It changes the capability of me running as a Bosch geothermal unit in an open loop scenario. Okay, so here's the three things. You've got to have water quality. Well, what do you mean water quality? That water quality needs to be a certain pH type number. We would love for it to be a neutral type water. Here in Oklahoma, we have pretty hard water. There's some areas that in our 30 miles from my house that literally the guys that have electric and hot water tank type units, they are cleaning those things out 3 to 4 times a year because the water is so hard. So here's the deal about an open loop: water quality. Okay, you've got to be able to test that water. Then the next one is water quantity. How much water do you have? Well, Fred, I've got a whole lot of water. What do you mean you got a whole lot of water? It's a whole lot of water until that well goes dry. Okay, so the system, the geothermal system in a open loop scenario is going to be looking at a GPM of about 1.5 gallons a minute per ton, as long as that water that is coming into that system is above 50 degrees. And when we drop below 50 degrees, 49 degrees and lower, then that water needs to be 2 gallons a minute per ton flowing through that machine. So you've got to have some water quantity. Okay. And so the next thing that we have to have, the third out of the three, would be, where am I going to dispose of that water? Okay. Is it going to go into a creek? Is it going to go into a riverbed? Is it going to go into a lake? Where does the EPA, where does it say legally that I can put that water back into Mother Earth? Well, some people say, well, Fred, I'm going to dig a hole and I'm going to put a pump in it. That's going to be my incoming water, and then my exiting water is I'm going to use that same well and basically put the water that has been used back in that same hole. No, you don't want to do that. You will not like the outcome of that particular standing column well, and what you thought you were going to have BTU wise and temperature wise is not going to be there later on. That system will affect that particular water that's already in that well. So 3 different things: quality, quantity, and disposal. Remember that when I said about the open loop, I never do say that an open loop system, the Bosch geothermal system in an open loop application, uses water. Okay, it does not use the water; it utilizes the water. If I use the water, that means that I would take that 1.5 gallons a minute, flow it through the machine, and then I used it up. Well, I'm utilizing that water, so whatever water came through that heat exchanger is now going to be expelled out of that heat exchanger into now Mother Earth somewhere. So again, we're just utilizing Mother Earth's water. So let's look at the closed loop application. The closed loop application is what some people would call the renewable energy situation, where we're putting a bunch of pipe in the ground somewhere, whether it's vertical, horizontal, or pond loop, and that kind of thing. We're digging a hole, and we're utilizing that fluid over and over and over and over, and basically in that process of using it over and over, we have a renewable type energy. So that particular GPM is different. And probably, I don't know the percentage of the equipment that's used in a GPM rated type flow device and regulatory to make their machine work good. We've used it forever, basically looking at 3 gallons a minute per ton. And when we drop down into the minimum of flow, we're looking at something that's going to be able to flow that, push that fluid through our heat exchanger, push it through the pipe that's in the out part of the structure at 2.25 is the minimum GPM per ton. So which one is better, vertical, horizontal, pond loop? The IGSPA people, which is the International Ground Source Heat Pump Association, they have been around for golly, since mid 70s. And they wrote a lot of books on the geothermal industry, on the piping and the fluid flow and things like that. And they literally have kind of been there, done that. throughout the world, and they would tell you that neither one of those applications are better than the other. It's all about economics. It's all about your space that you have to work with. It's all about your situation that we're looking at type scenario. So it's about the economics of being able to put that loop field into the ground at a most economical situation. So let's talk a little bit about how to sell the heat exchanger. Okay, how to sell the heat exchanger. And I've been doing this for golly since early '80s type thing, and I tell people that nobody ever got a goosebumps and all that kind of thing buying a heat exchanger from me. They just really didn't. Even though that heat exchanger may have a warranty, the pipe may have a warranty there for 55 years, and once you put it in the ground, you never want to dig it up and all that kind of thing. Nobody just ever enjoyed paying $15,000, $20,000, $25,000 for a heat exchanger. But I will tell you that when we started changing the name of that particular application, we started presenting it a little bit different. I'm not saying that they got fuzzy and whatnot and all that kind of thing about buying that from us anymore. But when we changed the name, people understood the value of what they're putting in the ground. And I really think that when they started looking at the value of that, then they started understanding that what we're fixing to call this heat exchanger is no longer a loop field. We don't ever sell loop fields anymore. Okay, so here's the new name of that. We're now calling that loop field out there an energy plant. So we're going to put a 6-ton, a 5-ton, a 4-ton, a 10-ton, whatever it may be. We're going to put that particular energy plant out there in the pond. We're going to put that energy plant on the side of the house. We're going to put that energy plant back there behind the orchard. That is how we're going to present this now. So when people buy an energy plant, that 15, that 12, that $1,000 it's better for them to see the value of that. And they're not paying $20,000 for just a bunch of pipe in the ground that they don't understand how it works. But when we look at the COPs of an air source system versus a geothermal system, and we look at that air source system as truly a system that, as the wintertime pushes in and the temperatures outside fall, so do those COPs. My geothermal system sitting at my house does not necessarily care about the outdoor temperature. The only thing that I worry about on a geothermal system is the incoming water temperature. And if I can design that energy plant, if I can design that for a certain amount of temperature, a certain amount of BTUs inside that temperature, then I can truly design that energy plant for the maximum BTUs at the lowest temperature, air source or air temperature outside. And that is one of the greatest attributes besides the longevity of the piece of equipment, is that literally, instead of me hoping and that July's temperature is going to be a certain degree, I can look at my geothermal design on my energy plant, and I can say July 2nd, that energy plant is going to be below this temperature. And if it's below this temperature, I'm going to get this output. And if it's below this temperature with that output, and my kilowatt rate is 10 cents a kilowatt, my electric bill is going to be that. I can't do that with an air source system, but I can do that with a geothermal system. So which type is better? Again, it's all about economics. So who are my customers? I'm going to tell you anyone. I'm going to tell you everyone. And then you're going to look at me and go, really? And then I'm going to say, really? Everyone is your customer. I don't know of very many applications that a geothermal system can't be put into that. I could take you down into the Louisiana area where they have basically the row homes, and I can take you inside a house where back in the early 90s, a gentleman went in and basically in 4 corners of the living room, And I understand that water is very prevalent down there and you don't have to dig very deep. But he had the forethought that he was putting geothermal in every house that he could walk into, and he did. And you know what? He took all of that money, paid his people, did people a great job, but he also put a lot of money in the bank. So some things that you need to consider. Let's talk about space. Do we have space? Do we have land? Do we have location? Where is that particular loop field going to be located? We've got to talk to Mr. and Mrs. Jones. We've got to tell them, when we do this, this is going to happen. When we do this, you're going to be giving up that part of the yard type scenario. I have pictures that I show people when we're talking about pushing the bit across the kitchen table. We have excavation pictures, because when I tell her that we're going to dig up this part of the yard, putting this energy plant in the backyard, I don't want her to call me up and go, Fred, you didn't tell me it was going to be this bad. No, ma'am, I showed you a picture that when the drilling rig went in and we had to come in here and we had to tie all of those pigtails together and make our header pit, I showed you pictures of what I would call nuking the backyard. We have trenches, we have dirt, we have piles, and in a new construction application, you know what? It's all going to be great because people are going to plant a yard. But in a retrofit application, when we're going into that particular application in a retrofit, that particular yard may take years to get back to normal. And I tell people in classes, you've got to be, as a geothermal contractor, you've got to be ready for the unexpected. You've got to be ready for the water to come into your ditch and basically pack your ditch in, and all of a sudden you've got to bring more dirt in type scenario. So external space, you bet. You've got to figure out, hey, is that pond close enough to the house for me to put a loop in? Can I make that pond the energy plant? Is that pond refillable? How does it get its runoff water? How deep is it? What kind of activity do we have in that pond? All of those types of applications and scenarios have to be looked at. What about the inside the structure? Do I have a physical space to bring a package unit in and set it down? Is there enough space left and right, front and back? What about the noise situation? My units are very quiet, but if you're looking at now taking that compressor that used to sit on the concrete pad outside, and now you're looking at taking it into the basement or taking it into, some cases, into the attic area, we have to now take a look at one of the comfort parts of the 7 ways of being comfortable is noise. And so you've got to understand that there may be some extra insulation, maybe some extra precaution to look at when you're looking at taking that particular package unit and putting it into a upstairs attic situation type thing. Look at a site plan. You get a site plan. It doesn't have to be an architectural drawing, guys. It just needs to be a site plan. Take a look. Open Mrs. Jones's and Mr. Jones's eyes to, hey, listen, this is your house. This is your house. What are you planning to do with this? And his ideas and her ideas, they may not be the same at this point in time, but you have to know where the best place to start to put your energy plant in. And in this case, it may be on the left-hand side down there at the bottom where there's really nothing planned at that point in time. We have to know that, because you sure wouldn't want to put it out there where the planned pool is, just because that's the closest place to the house and the flattest and whatnot. You've got to talk to the people. The issue behind the builders and the people being built for is always an issue. The builder is going to want you to put that loop, that energy plant, at the closest, most economical place. Okay, and again, he may have already put it out there in an easement somewhere, which is great. But when we start looking at talking different languages from the builder to the homeowner, there's going to be some things that come up that the builder may not have even thought about. So we have to be privy of that particular scenario. So who are my customers? Everyone. You got to look at the time. Okay. Again, we talked about the 72 hours, the call Okie dig here in Oklahoma. You've got to look at that scenario. So when you say, Fred, well, I want to sell geothermal, man, you've excited me. I want to sell geothermal 365, 24/7, and all of a sudden you tell me that there's a 72-hour wait period now to get a loop filled in. Yeah, you bet. There's a 72-hour wait period. But here's the deal about the other part of that 72 hours. I promise you today in Western Oklahoma, if you were to call one of the 2 or 3 guys drill wells for us here, they are too busy. They may be out 6 weeks, 5 weeks drilling holes. Okay. So there's a time type scenario thing that we've got to understand. Well, Fred, what are you going to do about during that time? There's a lot of things to look at. There's a lot of things to be prepared for. If Mrs. Smith's unit goes out on July the 2nd, I may have one of those old units that I pulled out of somebody else's house that I can put back into her house as a replacement. Basically, her some time, giving me some time to get everything geothermal wise. She may want geothermal. She wants to have that energy savings and that longevity piece of equipment. But if I'm not ready for it as a contractor, then I probably can't offer it to her. I will get scared and I will do what everybody else does in that particular situation, and I will put it in an air source system just because I may not know about the other things that I can do. So time, you bet. We've got to think about those things that are coming up. Monies, you bet. A little bit of money. It's a little bit of sometimes an issue. But when people are looking at reselling of a structure, it always comes into play, and it's always almost dollar for dollar. Whatever they spent, they will get back out of that system because, again, that energy plant sitting out there in the ground is going to be there for the next piece of equipment. It is chances are the warranty on that pipe is 55 years. A lot of rebates are involved still from the electrical power companies to the federal, that kind of scenario. So geothermal versus the air source, what's the difference? It's a little bit of time, a little bit of money. Ductwork is ductwork, labor is labor. You have to understand the difference. You have to understand the idea behind why people want to have geo. I always ask a question in class. If I had a 4-ton system, air source, and I had a 4-ton system, geothermal, water source, and I had 85-degree air coming into the air source, and I had 85-degree water coming into the geo, which one is more efficient? And everybody kind of looks around and they realize that, yep, this is a geo class, so the answer must be geo. And the answer is that particular medium that we use. If you can imagine Grandpa shoeing the horse, he had an 8th grade education. And when he was shoeing the horse and he was sticking, or the mule, and he was sticking that horseshoe in the fire, he totally understood the thermodynamics of water. He totally understood that it took him a long time to swing that old horseshoe that was hot, glowing in the air. But oh my gosh, if he had a gallon of water, he could take that same shoe and stick it down into that bucket of water, and within seconds be capable of putting it onto the mule, and that water cooled that shoe off more or quicker than the air did. It's the same principle behind geothermal properties and air source properties. Water, the medium that we use, is a different medium, and I tell people we don't play fair, and that's okay. That's okay. Again, this is session 1. There will be more to come. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you very much. And if you have any questions about the Bosch product, if you have any questions about the geothermal industry and what's to come, there will be more of these webinars to come, and there's more Rev C type webinars also. So again, thank you very much today.